welcome back to my True Crime podcast. Today we'll be talking about the case of Ted Bundy and how and why he became a serial killer. And while we look at this, we can really look at two main points, which is nature and nurture. It's been long debated that it's either one or the other, that someone's born evil or they're made evil. But it's really both of them. You kind of have to have a little evil in you and also be made evil at the same time for someone to really become a serial killer. Now, in the case of Ted Bundy, after he had passed away from the death penalty, they examined his brain and found he had this gene called the MAOA gene, or the monoamine oxidase A gene, or it's also commonly called the serial killer gene. And a lot of serial killers had this gene, and you are born with this, and it also can be passed down. Although many people do have this gene, but they never became serial killers because there are higher levels and lower levels, and Ted Bundy was on the higher side. Although if you have high levels, you kind of have to have something to trigger this, because it makes a person very violent and aggressive and just have a lot of anger built up in them. And it has to have some traumatic, either physical or emotional, trauma to really trigger it. And in the case of Ted Bundy, he suffered a lot of mental and emotional trauma, although he never did suffer physical, and it could be triggered by physical trauma as a hit to the head or some abuse that they suffered from the hands of people they love. Although in case of Ted Bundy, it was just emotional and mental, although he did suffer some physical, but it really wasn't a catalyst in his case. And the main point of emotional abuse or trauma he suffered is he had been lied to for half his life by his family. See, growing up, he had two parents and a sister. Although they went on to later tell him his parents were actually his grandparents, and his mother, or his sister, was actually his mother. And that really messed him up. He developed trust issues. He didn't really know what was real, and it stuck with him for a very long while. And also, his mother ended up pulling him out of the house, and he didn't want to leave, but he was kind of forced to. And he started isolating himself, and then he became very friendly and putting on this act, because secretly he started fantasizing about murder and how it would feel to take someone's life. And so he was a totally two different people. Out in public, this loving, kind dude, and behind closed doors, this guy who didn't know what he was and didn't know how to feel. So later on, he decided to actually act on these fantasies, and that's when he took his first victim, and he went on to kill many women and eventually got the death penalty for it. But in this case, you can really see how the gene was triggered by the abuse and the trauma he suffered, and how they have to work together in that way. Because just having the gene doesn't mean you will become a serial killer, and just because you suffer trauma or abuse doesn't mean you will become a serial killer. But mixing those together and also having specifically high levels of the gene, it really can create a serial killer cocktail. And especially it's prevalent in Ted Bundy's case. So you gotta have both of them for someone to be a serial killer. And yeah. So thank you for listening. Y'all have a wonderful day.